President Trump has once again signaled that the war with Iran may be ending, but messages from both him and his cabinet also signal that they're fighting a war with clarity. And clarity, at least at this point, doesn't seem to be winning. And today, the president told PBS that the war has a, quote, very good chance of ending. He then told the New York Post that it's too soon to prepare for a peace deal signing because uranium enrichment remains a sticking point. And Secretary of State Marco Rubio said this about Operation Epic Fury in his press conference yesterday.
The operation is over. Epic Fury, as the president notified Congress, we're done with that stage of it.
Then today on Truth Social, Trump posted, assuming Iran agrees to give what has been agreed to, which is perhaps a big assumption, the already legendary Epic Fury will be at an end. As for Operation Project Freedom, this is where the U.S. would escort ships through the Strait of Hormuz. President Trump announced that was being paused just hours after Rubio said it was a new phase of the war. So if you are having trouble keeping up with the different directions that this war is going, don't worry, you're not alone. And lucky for you, we have a few experts to help walk us through it. First is CBS Chief White House Correspondent Nancy Cortez. Nancy, great to see you. Thanks for being here. So I have to admit, I have a little bit of whiplash myself. Can you kind of walk us through where the White House is at this point?
Sure. I mean, most of the details that we've gotten today have come from the president himself and not White House officials. But what the president has been saying is that he believes that progress has been made in talks over the past 24 hours or so, and that he thinks there could be a deal in the next 24 to 48 hours on a memorandum of understanding that would basically set out the terms for negotiation going forward. So this wouldn't be some big overarching deal over Iran's nuclear program. It would simply say we are agreeing to talk about Iran's nuclear program, about U.S. sanctions on Iran, about frozen Iranian assets, and all the rest. Now, President Trump has said many times before that he thought that he was within reach of a deal, and those promises did not pan out. So we're watching the latest developments with a healthy dose of skepticism, especially because we haven't heard similar optimism coming from the Iranians yet. They say they have a new U.S. proposal and they are looking it over, but that's about all they've said so far.
And Nancy, what about the original plan to help guide ships through the Strait of Hormuz? How is the president defending that pause?
So he said last night in a Truth Social post that he was imposing the pause at the request of Pakistani mediators and other countries to give these negotiations time to play out over the next couple of days. It wasn't clear why the project had to be paused so soon after it had started, and after an entire day of not just President Trump, but also his secretaries of state and defense basically extolling the virtues of this new project, saying that it was going to reopen the strait, get ships moving again. In the end, only 2 commercial vessels were escorted through before the project was halted. So President Trump says this is all about diplomacy. At the same time, he is warning that if there isn't an agreement in the next couple of days, that the war could resume and that the U.S. could be pounding the Iranians harder than ever. So I think that, there's a lot of confusion right now over whether we are truly witnessing a diplomatic breakthrough or whether the goals have simply shrunk, or whether this is a lot of talk and actually we could see more kinetic action in the days ahead.
Yeah, big open question. But Nancy, thank you very much for guiding us all through it. I feel like I have a little more clarity now. So for more on this, we're going to turn to CBS News national security analyst Aaron MacLean. He's also the host of the School of War podcast. Aaron, thanks so much, as always, for being here. I want to pick up on the Strait of Hormuz and this idea that They were supposed to be escorting ships through the strait. That is now on hold. What should we be reading into this?
Well, Caitlin, in your introduction, you used, I think, the phrase whiplash-inducing. I certainly concur with that as an assessment. I was very surprised to see administration officials out for 2 days defending and explaining this operation, only to see it halted yesterday evening. The purpose of the operation, of course, was to remove or at least reduce the leverage that Iran has achieved by closing off the Strait of Hormuz, to keep our blockade on their points, but to get friendly shipping moving through the strait. Apparently, it has been paused to create the conditions for talks. Not for a deal. The president, people keep saying, it's because we're going to get a deal. No, at most what's on the table from the Iranians is an agreement to talk about a deal. And if you look at it from the Iranian perspective, going back to April 7th when this ceasefire began, the ceasefire was supposed to be paired with an opening of the Strait of Hormuz by the Iranians. They didn't open it, and they suffered no consequences. Then there was a 2-week deadline. The president blew through that 2-week deadline and set it again indefinitely. Then he started an effort to free up shipping in the strait. He paused it 2 days later to have these discussions. If I'm an Iranian negotiator, if I'm Vahidi, the head of the IRGC, who's very influential right now in the Iranian government, I'm not seeing the projection of a great deal of resolve from this administration.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you, to the extent that you can get in the minds of the Iranians when they're looking at these kind of competing or contrasting messages coming from the administration. It seems like they can capitalize on that potentially. And is there any chance that they go ahead and help open the strait? I mean, what's the incentive for them in that situation?
It is theoretically possible that this process that apparently we've paused Project Freedom to start could lead to a quote-unquote good deal by the standards of this administration. And I take that deal would involve something like the removal of the highly enriched uranium from Iran and the opening of the Strait of Hormuz. Why the Iranians would make those concessions in the face of what we're witnessing is a bit mysterious to me. They are famously difficult negotiators. They drive a hard bargain. They drive a hard bargain even when they perceive that they're weak. The United States right now, this administration feels like it's in a very strong position because of the blockade of Iranian ports, which the thought is over time that will grievously damage the Iranian economy, and that's probably true. But the Iranians feel like they're in a strong position because of their blockade of the strait and the economic pressure that puts on the world. Also because President Trump promised the American people a short war. As the strong Iranian response to the opening of the strait in the last couple of days showed, or the attempt to open it, a reopening of the strait will involve more combat.
I want to talk about China in all of this because the Iranian foreign minister said that they trust China. What does that mean right now? Are they playing a role in helping with the strait?
Well, look, I mean, the Chinese and the Iranians are obviously talking. There was a visit there. The Chinese have an interest in opening the strait on some level. I don't think their vision of what the strait being open would mean is exactly the same as what the American vision is. The American vision is a return to February 27th, when it was free to commercial traffic. I can imagine the Chinese signing off on some level of Iranian control, but they certainly want it more open than it is. The problem, I would suggest, is that among the unexpected negative consequences of this war, it could be an increased and more substantial Chinese role in the Middle East, which I can't imagine was a war aim of the United States going in. So I would be very leery if I were trying to bring about a deal through leveraging Chinese pressure on the Iranians. That's a dangerous road to go down.
Yeah, that's an important point to make. I also want to talk about, you have Rubio saying that Epic Fury is finished, but also saying that kind of anything done would be in a defensive posture. Does that align? Does that mean, can you say both of those things?
I can imagine a world in which there are military operations purely in the Strait of Hormuz and the United States sort of attempts to resist escalation in other spaces. That's sort of what we saw on Monday and Tuesday when we were defending the very limited amount of shipping that was going through the strait at that point. The Iranians were escalating by striking the UAE, and we were not responding. But on some level, these are all language games that are being played right now. We are in a war. There are periods of relative ceasefire and increased violence, and we kind of go back and forth from day to day. And there are both legal, because of the War Powers Resolution, but also political reasons why this administration just doesn't want to be forthright about this. The president promised a 4 to 6 week war. We're now 2 months in.
Yeah, and he's seeing that political pressure kind of all around the country. Thank you very much. We'll have to invite you back because who knows what tomorrow will bring. Thank you very much, Aaron MacLean. Appreciate your time.